What is up, guys? Today we're going to look at the 1.18 changes that is coming, and I'm going to tell you what's good, what's not so good, and I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. First of all, there's going to be some buffs and nerfs. Of course, you can see here the Italian tech tree is also dropping in 1.18, but rebalance of vehicles, I'll be straight up with you. I am totally against nerfs, and this means players who put in the time and effort and money into grinding, it's going to make them pretty upset. But of course, buffing the rest of the tanks in the game requires more work. So the calculus they're making here is, to offend a smaller number of players, players who own Kranwagens, and appeasing a larger portion of the player population. The problem is those offended will carry a deeper resentment towards these nerfs. The bigger issue is, in the long run, what this does is create the perception of wargaming being less trustworthy. I mean, not like they've been, they're not seen as very trustworthy to begin with, but this definitely does not help them improve their image. Because with this exercise, what it means is, going forward, there's no guarantee that any tech tree tank will remain as fun as you thought it would always be. Think about it. All the effort, time and money players like yourself poured into grinding a particular tech tree tank. Imagine, the XP for the crew skills, all the XP for the field modifications, all the bonds for 2 sets of purple equipment, 3D styles, custom paints, camos and decals. I bet there's a small percentage of players that made the Kranwagen their primary tank, and they're gonna be extremely upset about this. Overall, I think the nerfs are not good move, and the game's integrity will suffer a loss of confidence. That's my opinion. But as you can see, some tanks have been buffed, which is not a problem because a lot of tanks need to be brought up to 2022 standards. But tanks like this, the T29, nerfed. I don't know, man. There's a lot of people that like T29s. I haven't played a T29 in years, but I played a couple of thousand games on it when I first got it, and it was an easy tank to play. It was because it was a very competitive tank. It was easy for a new player to pick up and easy for them to get addicted to the game. But now you nerf it, I don't think there's anything positive that's going to come from it. I think it's better they just kept the T29 the way it is, but keep buffing the tanks that are around it. That is what I think should be the right way to go. But a bunch of tanks being buffed, a bunch of tanks being nerfed as well. And here we go, the next piece of news. New maps. One singular, only one new map. After all that time and effort on recon missions, we get one map? I bet you this map, Outpost, will get complaints, and it will be reworked again too. Now my point is, maps are never going to be perfect and are always going to be a work in progress. So why not just release a bunch of new maps anyway? Eventually, the players are going to let you know if they like them or hate them, and you can always rework them, remove them, and then later add them again, right? I appreciate the efforts Wargaming are making to balance the maps and constantly working on them, and you can see they are meticulous in the level of details in the macro level, but in their pursuit of perfection, trying to get each map so good, their collective energy is being taken away from creating new maps. And the more time they spend correcting old maps and and the more of these maps are just beginning to look more eerily symmetric. In my opinion, I think it's okay to make maps asymmetric. Your side does not, your side of the map does not have to mirror the other side of the map. Because when you do this, you're literally making the map 50% smaller. If the other side of the map is the same as this side of the map, why would my brain be stimulated? You know what I mean? There would be so much less things to discover, and this would make my brain reach peak boredom, to be honest. Remember, Wargaming removed 2 maps permanently in May 2022, and now in August 2022, they are only adding 1 new map. I think it's better if they just added 5 new maps and not bother so much about making them perfect, because they're never going to be perfect anyway. But overall, the map changes are good because it will add another 30 seconds of average gameplay and make each match feel slightly more challenging. Now, most of the map changes relate to denying the early damage opportunities. This means more HP will be left on the battlefield for longer periods, which you can also interpret as kind of a buff to tanks with capable armor and hull down abilities. So that's what I think about the map changes. In a way, it's kind of like buffing tanks with armor and hull down abilities, because you're taking away the opportunities for the fast tanks and light tanks that can get into the positions where you get the early damage. A big chunk of damage you can get out of those light and medium tanks getting into those early spots, those places where the heavy tanks are crossing. You can always see in the start of the game, these light tanks and medium tanks, they are farming out 3,000-4,000 of damage very early in the game, and this makes the game end a lot quicker. The plus side is, the bonus is, the games will last a little bit longer because more HP is left on the table. But the downside is, again, this is going to be kind of a buff for heavy tanks that can defend the corridor, and that's what I think. The next piece of news here regarding light tanks, looks like they are going to attempt to make a better matchmaking for light tanks, which means they are going to match head-to-head light tanks. And no more imbalanced light tanks with medium tanks. They are going to get light tanks matched up with light tanks, and in particular EBRs matched up with EBRs, and only 1 EBR per game. Now, this is in a testing phase, which means there is no guarantee that it's going to be one EBR every game. But they're going to try their best to make it so. So that is the plan. 1 EBR per game per team. They're not going to match up 2 EBRs and 1 EBR on the enemy team. They're going to try their best. They're going to use their algorithms and their codes to try to make better matchmaking for light tanks, as well as artillery. So they're going to try and end the 3 artillery per game matchup. So they're going to try and make 1 artillery per game, or maybe maximum of 2 artillery per matchup. So they're trying to get rid of the 3 artillery per matchup, but this is going to all depend on the waiting times. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope this is a success. But let's forward this part. I don't think anybody cares about topography. So we're gonna move on to the next piece of news, which is broken track animation. This is really cool because there's going to be cooler animation for the broken tracks. As you can see here, they're going to use a separate new system that reads how tracks are going to be broken. It doesn't look very realistic in my opinion, but it's a lot better than what you have now because it's a change, it's an improvement, so that's going to be great. And the final news is the Italian tank destroyers. Now, I didn't tell you this, but I can tell you now, I did get a chance to super test the tier 10 Contra Caro, and to be honest, I really can't remember how much a lot about it right now because it was like a month ago or something like that. But I do remember that it was not bad. It had very strong frontal armor, and I thought it was okay. I thought it was quite good. Not super fantastic, but most of the feedback from the other super testers were it was too weak and needed to be buffed. I was the only one that thought it was great the way it was. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this, that I did get to test out the tier 10, is because I am not a super tester. I almost never get a chance to super test any of the unreleased tanks. So when I got invited to test out the tier 10, just like a bunch of other community contributors, I think this is important because Wargaming invited community contributors to test out the tank. This means they thought about it. They were kind of concerned about how these tanks were going to perform. That is why they sought out the opinions of people outside their super test community. They didn't just take the word of their super testers. They reached out to community contributors, which is much appreciated. In my opinion, I think this tank is just kind of normal, kind of average. With that being said, I have 500,000 free XP in my bank, and truth be told, I would rather save it for the Czech line tank destroyers. If the new Czechoslovakian tank destroyers line is anything like the tier 8 premium SHPTK TVP 100, this would be the line of tanks I would rather invest my hard-earned free XP on, because the Italian tank destroyers, they're not terrible, but you know, they're not going to be game-changing. They're slow, they rely on armor, they're not going to be huge great game changers. Hope you enjoyed this video and you know, appreciated my feedback and what I think about 118, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.